Okay, good evening. Hope everyone is well. We're going to begin. So Teruma, beginning as it does, the second half effectively of Sefer Shmos, it's always important to begin with understanding basic ideas, basic principles. For that, we have to see both a Ramban and a Sforno, which give the two what looks like the two opposing perspectives on the function, the essential purpose of the Mishkan. But as we'll see, there are those who want to understand that, in fact, what looks like two completely different perspectives on the Mishkan can actually be understood as almost two halves of the whole, two different ideals as to what the Mishkan, two different levels as to what the Mishkan itself was trying to achieve. So let's begin with the Ramban. The Ramban is the very first Ramban on the Parsha. We're just going to see a little bit of it. If you're following inside, if not, as always, don't worry. We'll try and say it aloud. So the Ramban says like this, very beginning. It's really his introduction to the Parsha. Kasher diber Hashem in Yisrael, he says, ponim befonim aseres hadibros. Hashem spoke to Bnei Yisrael face to face with the aseres hadibros. And he commanded them certain mitzvahs, which are the, if you like, the ovos. They are the primary categories of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, as we know. As is the practice with Gerim who come to join the Jewish people. We teach them initially the big, the big things, the key chief principles. Israel accepted everything that Moshe told them to do. The Korasman Brisal calls that, end of last week's Parsha. There's a bris, there's a covenant that is made with them. Me'ato now, he is to them as a Hashem is their God, and they are to him as a people. As he gave it the condition with them, he said, "If you listen to me, if you listen to me, you'll be an Am Segula, be exactly as he promised." And he said, "You shall be a Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh." V'hinei, he says, "Heim Kedoshim ru'uyim sheyeh bohem mikdosh lahasros shchinosoi beineim." And therefore, the fact that they are Kedoshim, the fact that they fulfilled this essential, because he said to them, if you keep this, you will be a Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh, a holy nation, and he made that covenant with them. Now they are Kedoshim, and therefore it's fitting that they should have a mikdosh lahasher shchinos beineim, that the Shechina should dwell amongst them. So the Ramban's perspective goes on to explain that is why he says tzivot tchila al diber mishkan shelo bayis v'seichel mekudash lishmoi. They should have this sanctuary within them, and there he would speak to Moshe and he would command them, etc., etc. And then he goes on to describe the different elements of the Mishkan. So the Ramban's perspective is that the Mishkan is there as a, what you would say, a complete lechatchila. In the first instance, on the contrary, this is exactly how it's designed to be. Hashem says, I'll give you the Torah. If you agree to accept it, you will become that Goy Kodesh, that great, and then I will rest my presence amongst you, and that is the Mishkan. The Sforno in two places learns differently. The Sforno is not the only one who learns differently. If you look at the Sforno here initially, Per Chofei Posuk Tes, Sforno says, very brief Sforno says on the words V'chein Ta'asu. Now, you should do. The Posuk says, according to everything I've shown you, the structure of the Mishkan and all the Kalim, V'chein Ta'asu, and this is what you shall, and this is how you shall. This is what you shall do. V'chein Ta'asu, says the Sforno. Atem, this is what you should do, so that I should dwell amongst you. To speak with you, and to accept the tefillah and the service of Yisrael. Not as it was before the Egel Azar. Because it says there, wherever, in any place, before the Egel Azar, it says, I will come to you. Perechov Posuk Chov Dalad. It says B'chol Mokod, right? Perechov Posuk Chov Dalad. Straight after the Aseres HaDibros, what does it say? It says B'chol Mokom Asher Azkesh Shmi. Wherever you mention my name, where I mention my name, Ovayelech, I will come to you. Overachtichon, I will bless you. Doesn't matter where you are. Don't need to be in a Mishkan, a Mikdosh. I will come to you wherever you are. That was how it was supposed to be. But because of the Egel Azov, it was impossible. It couldn't be in any place, in every place. There was a need for a Mishkan. So the Sforno is on the school of thought that the Mishkan would never have been needed had it not been for the Egel Hazor. The Sforno says the same thing later on, and it's worth seeing this inside, because there you see also that Rashi holds the same way. And this is where it's really important to see these parshas as one whole, because if we stick only to Truma, we miss it. Perek Lamed Aleph Pasuk Yud Ches, which is a very, very important pasuk for Truma, even though it's in Kisisa. That's there, right? Perek Lamed Aleph Pasuk Yud Ches. The pasuk says, right, the first pasuk of Sheni, that pasuk which seems to be the bridge. This is my Kisisa is my bar mitzvah sedra. I have a sort of like yeah, exactly, a particular affinity for Kisisa. So Kisisa has, if you recall, has very long Rishon and very long Sheni, right? Because you've got to get all the way to Egel Azov. To be Egel Azov should be in Levi, right? Because they didn't take part, right? That's how it is. So it's very, very long. 2 columns of Rishon, 2 columns of Sheni. And it finishes with the description of, again, Shabbos. You've got the Parsha of Shomru. And then you've got this pasuk, which seems to almost like hover there in the middle before you get to the description of the Egel Hazov. And that pasuk is Yud Ches. Vayitain el Moshe, he gave to Moshe kechalo so ledaber ito b'Har Sinai. When he finished speaking to him on Har Sinai, shnei luchos ha'edus. And gave him the two luchos, right? The 2 luchos ha'edus. Those 2 tablets, luchos even kasuvim be'etzba Elokim, that were written with the finger of Hashem. And then the next pasuk is the beginning of Perek Lamed Beis, which is the Egel Hazor. The people saw Kibo Sheish Moshe. They had someone. So this pasuk almost like, this is a key pasuk. He gave to Moshe the 2 luchos, and then we have the Egel Hazor, and then of course he coming down the mountain and smashing the Egel Hazor. Now look at the Sforno there. Look at the Sforno there if you're following inside. And the Sforno says, after it's described all of the good and the wonderful things that Moshe achieved when he stayed on the mountain for 40 days, it explains the reason why did he not? Why did he not achieve then the ultimate ambition that was supposed to have taken place on Matan Torah? You should be a Mamleches Kohanim, the Goy. What happened to that? Where's the Goy? Where's the great and holy nation? Okay, where is the B'chai? Quotes the same pasuk as before. That pasuk which it says about the Mizbeach, wherever you are, I'll come to you wherever it is. B'cholamokim, any place. What happened to that? Until they had to Mishkan. Until they had to actually, that couldn't happen, and they had to build a Mishkan. V'hoidia, and the Torah is telling us shekora zeh b'sibas roya b'chiras Yisrael. You want to know why it happened? The Torah is telling us that it didn't happen in the way it should have happened because of the bad choices. The bad choices that Bnei Yisrael made. They were given the luchos which would have put them on that level, the first luchos, right? As everything that wanted Vahima, as he wanted Vahima Mora Vishchisu Darkman Oflim Amalos. They did the wrong thing. They fell from that Madrega. As it says, they removed their crowns from Har Choreb. So this is the Sforno again, saying the same thing. Rashi there says the same as the Sforno. Rashi says on Perek Lamed Aleph Pasuk Yud Ches that there is no muktam u'mu'ucha b'Torah, there's no order specifically necessarily, and he says that the incident of the Egel happened before the command to build the Mishkan. So Rashi learns like this Sforno as well. In fact, the Egel all took place before. And now it would seem ostensibly you'd think that these are just 2 radically different approaches to the whole of Sefer Shmos, right? Was the Mishkan elechatchila? Was that how it was supposed to be? That was the pathway from Yisro to Mishpatim straight to Truma, or was it all only because, well, unfortunately they couldn't get that B'chol Mokom, that Hashem connection with Hashem everywhere, so they had to build a Mishkan, and there would be a place for Hashem to be the Shekhinah. Yeah. That seems to be it. The Shem Mishmuel, however, says that this is very difficult to understand, and it's very difficult to understand the approach of Rashi and the Sforno. Why? Because he says, think about it. V'haviyosim and Har Kodshi, the whole idea, right? What we daven for, right? The rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. I'll bring you back, and you will come, and there will be a Beis Shlishi. He says, go and look, the Shemesh Shmuel says, go and look, words to the effect of, go and look at the last parakim of Yechezkel, and you will find this incredible description of the Beis Shlishi. What do you mean? If the whole idea, you with me, of a Mishkan, and therefore a Beis Hamikdash, is itself a B'di'evet, are you with me? It's only there because the possibility of connecting anywhere and everywhere was lost because of the failure of the golden calf. Yeah, so what do we do? Why is it that that's become, for us, like the ultimate aim and ambition to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash? Big question, huh? It's a great kasha. Yeah. So he says like this. He says like this. He brings a few things, a few ideas, but one particular point he makes reference to really stood out for me. We say he doesn't mention the tefillah of Nachem on Tisha B'Av, but he mentions an idea that we mention within that tefillah, and it's a line in Nachem that's always really, I think, it's a very, very powerful line. You remember that line? Yeah, because you, Hashem, set it on fire. You lit the fire, so to speak. And you will one day rebuild it with fire too. The fire, right? Remember that line in Nachem, the tefillah that we say on Tisha B'Av in Yerushalayim Miracle, right? We say it was lit with fire and you will rebuild it with fire. Now the source of that actually is a Gemara in Bava Kama, I think, the idea of the fire and being, because it was destroyed with fire, therefore it will be rebuilt with fire. But what the Shem Shmuel does with this is, he says like this, that it's not that these two different perspectives on the Mishkan should be seen as mutually exclusive. He says, no, they represent the two levels of what the Mishkan is and what the Mishkan can be, okay? If not for the Egel Hazov, okay, the Mishkan would have been something totally different. It would have been something effectively built out of fire, something that would be beyond our comprehension. It wouldn't be something that we would have, I suppose, the way it's described in a manner that we can understand and visualize exactly how it's built. You know, look at all the details in this parsha, you know, the physical structure. It would be something that's really beyond our comprehension, something entirely spiritual. They would have lived on the level of Adam Harishon before the Chet. We wouldn't be able to comprehend. It would be an entirely, if you like, ruchnius thing, something totally spiritual. Now, we actually, and he understands that really, although we can read the Pesukim of Yechezkel, we don't really understand exactly what that Bayis Shlishi is. He says that's what the Bayis Shlishi is, okay? That is what it is, the Beis HaMikdash of Yechezkel, the one described. You look it up. It's the last 8 to 10 prokim of Sefer Yechezkel, detailing great detail what that Beis HaMikdash will be. And you know, they say that, Chazal say that Beis HaMikdash, or the Farshim say, that would have been the Bayis Sheni. The one that Yechezkel, yeah, the Nevuah of Yechezkel was while they were in Golis, in Bovel. That's where he prophesied. Now, it would have been that what he prophesied could have been the second Beis HaMikdash had they been worthy. You know, it would have gone straight from Model 1 to Model 3, you know, when it would have been 2, right? But it didn't happen like that, and the Beis Sheni was only built through the permission of Persians, etc., etc. But that's what this ultimate Bayis Shlishi is. And that is the Beis HaMikdash of fire, the Eish Le'osid, the fire in the future. What happened, though? Because of the Egel Azov, it was a lower madrega, it was a lower level. And the Beis HaMikdash of Shlomo HaMelech parallels that lower madrega in that sense, that lower level as well, because it's also something within our comprehension. We can understand, we can learn, we can see, we can understand how they built that Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash. So this is what the Shem Shmuel says. Ramon Chaim Miller, quoting the Shem Shmuel, says, and this is where it comes onto the what do we take from this in terms of ourselves, our own spiritual growth. He says like this, he says, there are two ways of coming close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we've resolved and understand, you know, that the Ramban on one side and Sforno and Rashi on the other side, according to this, are not mutually exclusive, right? They are representing the two different approach. Of course, you still have a debate when exactly how it happened, but they are representing essentially, right, what the Mishkan, they both agree there would have been a Mishkan, but it would have been a different level Mishkan. That's the point, right? The way it was built was because of the Egel Hazor. Okay, yeah, instead of being an entirely spiritual idea, if you like, in that, or not an idea having a physical sense, but it would have been on a different level, a much greater and higher level. So Mordechai Miller says that in terms of our spiritual growth, we need to understand the following thing. There are two ways of coming close to Hashem. One is through pure joy, simcha, ahava, right? That sense of, you know, the closeness, essential joy. That is the, if you like, the fire, the eish of Klal Yisrael before the Chet, before the Egel Hazav, right? Had they not perform the Egel. That's clearly sort of standing there at Matan Torah, had they not, the golden calf not transpired. And that will be the ultimate fire and inspiration of the future, right? That pure joy and simcha and ava. But there is another way that we can come close to Hashem. And that is, he says, through what he calls the shviras lev, the broken heart of us knowing what could have been and the fact that it may yet be. You know, that level, we're not there, but we might get there, but we can get there. We can see that there's something there to achieve and to attain. And that's the other way of coming close to Hashem. And he says that is why the broken pieces, the shivrei luchos, right? The broken pieces, the first luchos, are in the Aron. Why? So that we have that hope. You understand? We have that aim, that goal to get back to that higher level. Because ultimately, that's the two things, isn't it? You've got the broken pieces of the luchos rishonos, which would have been with that, you know, pre-Egel Hazov, that Mishkan of fire. But we've got the luchos shnios, which Moshe Rabbeinu had to make himself, and it wasn't the same, and it wasn't the same level, but both are in the Aron. The pieces are still there so that we still have the aspiration to come close to what the high level could achieve, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful idea. And I think it's really, really essential to understanding this, the whole of the Mishkan, you know, and everything what it represents, to keep in mind as we learn through it, that these two perspectives on when it happened and how it happened, actually, yes, of course, they are two different perspectives on what happened, but according to this way of understanding, ultimately they represent two levels. There's the level of how it happened because of the Egel Hazov, but it's also the level of what can be and what will be in the future, and how we always have that aspiration to get to that higher level as well. Now, I want to share with you, just still on that pasuk of the one in Kisisa, because it's directly relevant to this. Rav Shach, his Machshavas Musa, so he says on this pasuk, Vayitein al Moshe kechaloso ledaber ito. He says like this, that what exactly the Hamek Dov, the Netziv, he brings the Netziv. The Netziv says that really this pasuk is quite difficult to understand, that pasuk, because really what it should say, it is v'hoyo kechaloso ledaber ito b'Har Sinai. When he finished speaking to him on Har Sinai, okay, nosan el Moshe shnei luchos. When he finished speaking to him, he gave him the two luchos. You'll see why this is true in a second, right? Right. You gave him the two luchos. Why does it say? Why does it say it that way around? Why does it say Vayitein al Moshe? He gave to Moshe when he finished speaking with him on Har Sinai the two luchos. Right. The better way of writing it, seemingly, would have been right when he finished speaking. Right. He gave him the two luchos. There's this Vayitein al Moshe. Then it's kechalosa when he finished speaking with him. And then it says the two luchos, right? The structure is very strange. So the Netziv says that like this, that included in the giving, Vayitein el Moshe, was and part of the gift was the fact that he finished speaking with him. In other words, the idea, okay, that he would be able to continue himself from this point on, being, if you like, mechadesh, developing himself, Moshe himself, and the future generations, thoughts, ideas, perspectives, the idea of the Torah. The idea being that the finishing, if you like, that was also given to Moshe. Vayitein el Moshe, he gave to Moshe, kechaloso ledaber ito. The finishing of speaking with him was itself a gift, because we now have the ability ourselves to finish it, if you like. The idea of lo b'shamayim, right? That it's not, inshallah, we can build on that. We can ourselves make chidushim, you know, new ideas in the Torah itself that we learn, that we study, the whole idea. In other words, the gift is not just the Torah, the gift is the kechaloso, the idea that Hashem says, I have given this to you. It's not b'shamayim, I've given it to you to complete. That finish, the fact that I finished, if you like, talking to you is itself a gift. You can continue, so to speak. That is the idea. That is the idea that you can now create new ideas in this way. The Hashem created us, he says, in such a way that we have to work. We have to work at learning things. We have to work at understanding things. But that's the whole idea. The whole idea is that through the effort we put in, that is how we get that. That is how we essentially get a reward ourselves. So the idea is that when it says also, he says, when it says v'yikhu li truma, what does it mean? V'yikhu li truma. The idea is you be in control, Hashem says. You take for me a truma. You find a place for me. You be in charge. We have the responsibility. The responsibility to create it devolves on us. He brings a medrash. Chazal say it's a medrash. It's a medrash in Shmos Rabbah. It says that it's a mashal. The medrash brings a mashal for a king who had an only daughter and marries her off and he marries her off the king, and the chosan comes to take the king's daughter, and the king says to his new son-in-law, he says, that daughter, my daughter, she's my only daughter, and I can't leave her in this way. I can't. She's my only daughter. How am I supposed to just leave her, right? I can't say though that you can't take her because you just married her. So clearly you have to clearly take her into your home now. But he said to him like this. The king says to the son-in-law, he says like this, do me a little favor, just make me a little room, a little spare room in your house, so that when I visit, I'll still be able to visit, I can come and see you. So Hashem says to the Bnei Yisrael like this, I'm giving you the Torah. I can't leave the Torah. It's the greatest thing I have, so to speak. I can't part from it entirely. Wherever you go, make a little home for me. Right? Make for me a mikdash for shachanti b'socham. You make a place for me. You find space for me where you are. That idea of truma, v'yikhu li truma, you take for me a truma. Take it for me. You in control. This is the kachaloso ledaverite. Now it's for you. Now it's for you to develop this further. It's for you to build it and make sure you now find space for me rather than the other way around. So the transition here between it all being there in Shemayim and now it's not being, and now it's on the earth, if you like, as such. Yeah, okay. So there's a Ksav Sofer. So much time we've got time for. There's a Ksav Sofer who says like this. The Ksav Sofer, at some point in his life, they dedicated a new shul. Yeah, a new shul in his city. Or at least they expanded it. It says they expanded the Beis HaKnesses HaGadol Be'iro, the major shul in his city, and at that dedication of the Beis HaKnesses, he gave a drosha, and in that drosha he talked about a medrash on this week's parsha. The medrash says, and the medrash is actually brought in the Hakdama. He says the introduction to the Ein Yaakov. There's a discussion in the medrash amongst various Tanoim as to what is the most a pasuk in the Torah that includes all others. Ben Zoyma Omer, Matzina pasuk HaKol b'Torah. What is the most inclusive pasuk in the Torah? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. Ben Nana Omer, Matzina pasuk HaKol Yosef. Ben Nana says no. There's a pasuk which is more inclusive of everything and everything, more than Shema Yisrael. What is that? V'Yohavta l'recha kamocha. That, he said, is the most inclusive of anything in the Torah. Shimon ben Pazi Omer. Shimon ben Pazi says no. There is a pasuk which is even more inclusive, and that's Esakeves Echad Taseh B'Boker. The pasuk which says the Talmud, one in the morning, one in the evening. That's more inclusive. I think. Omar Rebbe al Ploni al Raglov. Omar Rebbe al Raglov. Rebbe stood on his feet. Maybe it says Rebbe Ploni. I don't know exactly who it is. But Omar, he says Halacha keben Pazi, and he says Halacha keben Pazi. The halacha is like ben Pazi. Shneamar, as the pasuk says, as it says in our pasuk, right? According to everything I've shown you, the construction of the Mishkan and the construction of the Kalim, v'chein tasu, and so you shall do. That's very cryptic medrash. Okay, 3 levels. Shema Yisrael, one opinion. Next opinion is v'havta l'recha kamocha is the most inclusive of everything, and the third is as the Talmud, the daily Talmud, or the offering in the Keves Echad B'Boker. I don't understand exactly why that's why that should be most inclusive of all. And then what has it got to do with our pasuk in our parsha? Right? So it's whole thing's a bit of a puzzle. The Ksav Sofer says like this: the 3 levels are as follows. The first one is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That is understanding that when it comes to accepting the yoke of heaven, it is not good enough for us to just do it ourselves. It is something we need to proclaim to others. But it's right. The idea of belief in Hashem has to be a Shema Yisrael. It's a calling out to others, not just being alone by ourselves, saying, no, it's not good enough if I believe alone. I want others to believe with me. Shema Yisrael, listen, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And that's why Ben Nana says that is the pasuk which is most inclusive, because we bring everyone else together with us in a spiritual sense. Okay? The second opinion, okay, is the pasuk of the second opinion is the second v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Okay, says the Shimon the first opinion is Ben Zoma, the second one is Ben Nanas. Ben Nanas says v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha because that pasuk is even more inclusive, because this is not just that we have to be concerned about other people's olam haba, right? Their spirituality. Do they believe in Hashem? Right? That we reach out to them in that sense. But v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha includes also caring for them in olam hazeh as well. Therefore, it's even more inclusive, he argues, right? Because it includes everything as well, right? Everything, right? We care for their needs as they are in this world as well as the world to come, right? And that's why, because of course, if you have to l'reacha kamocha, you love them the same as yourself. So exactly, it's in every way, right? But the third level, which is the idea of this is the idea that it is incomparable when a mitzvah is performed on an individual level, and a mitzvah is performed on a public level, on a public forum, when people join together for the sake of a mitzvah. This is the highest level. This is the level where, when there is a tremendous reward, there's a tremendous schar when we have the ability to come together to do any mitzvah. So Ben Pazi says that the level, the highest level, the most inclusive pasuk that there is the concept of the korban tomid. You singular, but it's not singular because it was a korban, right? It was a korban sibur. It was a public korban, but nevertheless, because it is, he says, not enough to inspire someone else to do a mitzvah, like Shema Yisrael Hashem. You should believe like me. No, we need to do it together. Ba'achdus. We do the mitzvah together, ba'achdus. On that, Rabbi stood up and said the pasuk in this week's parsha, and so you shall do. And the Mefarshim, Rashi talks about it as well. This Vov troubles Rashi and others, right? And so you shall do. It should say, as I showed you, so you shall do. What's v'chein tasu? And so you shall do. So the idea is that Hashem wanted it specifically that there should be this ultimate participation of all in the building of the Mishkan. Everyone should take part, okay? And then it says, v'chein tasu, and so you shall do. So you shall learn from here for every other mitzvah. It's a beautiful, beautiful pshat, the Ksav Sofer, right? The v'chein, and so you shall do, is a message. Learn, right? That's that Vov. Yeah, if you want to know the reference, you know where it is at the beginning of the parsha, right? Where is it? V'chein tasu. It's important just to see it inside, right? Just before the Lauren Pasuk. Test, as I have shown you, how you're building the Mishkan, which is complete unity. You're coming together. Rabbi Sachs used to always say this is a beautiful thing, It's the only time there's no machlokas, And they come together and they build something together, right? Jewish people, right? We come together and building, there's no machlokas. Everyone's coming together because it's a united project. So the v'chein, and so you shall do, is not about the Mishkan only. It's about every other approach you have. V'chein nase says, kol ha-mitzvahs barabim. That's how we should do all mitzvahs barabim, together in public, in unity. Yeah? And that is what Rebbe meant when he said, halacha ka ben Pazi. Rebbe stood on his feet and said, the halacha is like Ben Pazi. Ben Pazi, who was the one who was able to see the idea of the korban sibur and the Korban Tomid, the daily covenant that's born on behalf of everyone, is to bring everyone together as one, as one. He adds to that and says what we see from the pasuk in this week's parsha is that it's not only the korbanos. On the contrary, the Chaim Tasu, that's just the model. The Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan is the model of how we should approach all mitzvahs. The more we can do mitzvahs together, the more we can do them ba'achdus, the greater the level we can achieve. And maybe we can link that to, as we began, maybe that is perhaps the key. Instead of the dissonance and the discord that's created through the Egel Hazor, which takes the Mishkan down, unfortunately, to that lower level of the Mishkan, if we want to achieve the ultimate Mishkan, the Eish, to build the Mishkan with fire, maybe those are the key words. The Chaim Tasu, when we come together in unity to perform mitzvahs, then we can reach that higher madriga. Have a very good Shabbos. Thanks for joining.